All right, guys, we are back once again. It's DJ Pompey, and I am doing some mix-down work on a track by my friends Zach and Cooper called ICU. And today we're going to be consolidating the vocal track. Now, let me show you what this looked like when I got it here. And verse 2 is still like that. We'll let the empty chorus play out here.
Certainty escapes, the blankness of my canvas. Reinvention imminent upon the loss of standards. Hammer out a statement, the rest of them digest it. The mess of how they wait for us to conjure up a lesson. I dream a disposition, deemed for me to witness. A brighter disposition comes from thoughts of this existence. Listen, you can hear the sunshine make the pavement crack. Or you can find a voice to get the music back. Modern day ballads to the better bitch that got away. Find a way to make it through the thought of how you felt that day. Sway to the drums, your rhythm slightly differs, but listen up. They never swallow all the shit you're spitting up. Give it up, the doubt you have is just enough to interrupt. It's been abrupt, but the effort's just enough. The sinner of a man gets distracted by the past, rediscovers consciousness and hopes that it will last.
Alright, so you can see that there are all these different vocal takes that have all gone into separate tracks. And I did clarify with Cooper, because they've all got their own sort of processing on them. I clarified with Cooper, and he said that they were tuned differently on purpose, you know, kind of so the effects sort of changed throughout the verses you heard, and that was a deliberate decision. But today I'm going to bring them all back together for a couple reasons. One, it is really cumbersome to work with vocals in just a bunch of different tracks. Like if you happen to do a bunch of different recordings, recorded takes, and want them all to be together, this is going to be very cumbersome to work with them all like this. And also, I don't think there's really a good reason to have the main vocals vary that much in their effects throughout. It was kind of interesting concept. It's like he's he's over here, then he's over here, and whatever. But I'm gonna in my mix engineer role kind of override that. And then I'll show you afterward, once we get these all consolidated, how if you do want it to change, you know, that there's a better way of doing that actually. So that's where we're going. And in the end, I've already done this. I've already consolidated with the first verse. They're gonna just all be up here. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so we just did that. Fast forwarded through that a little bit. Got them all dragged there. There's a couple that didn't quite fit because he actually talks over himself. Let's see how that sounds here.
Felt that day. Sway to the drums, your rhythm slightly differs, but listen up. They never swallow all the shit you're spitting up. Give it up. The doubt you have is just enough to interrupt. It's been abrupt, but the effort's just enough. The sinner of a...
So ultimately, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to decide that one of those layers isn't a main vocal, it's an ad-lib vocal, and that's why he's coming in and talking over himself, and it'll go in a separate channel for that. But what we've done here is just gotten rid of 8 more vocal channels to work with, and you know, earlier with the first verse, we got rid of a whole bunch as well. Now there are various other ad-lib tracks. We'll probably consolidate those onto sort of 1 or 2 or maybe 3, just a few continuous ad-lib tracks. And you know, this is gonna bring the track together a little better. It's confusing to have one person's voice coming in processed, you know, like a dozen different ways, like it was. It should probably only be like a few different kind of voices. Now, another thing, let's take a look at these vocal samples. Now, you notice that warp is actually enabled for these recorded tracks. Their original BPM is noted at 96. This track is at 96 beats per minute, so they were recorded at the native tempo. That's good. But they've got warping enabled, and they've got beats warping enabled, as opposed to like Complex Pro, which is what I would be using for a vocal if I did have to warp a vocal. It doesn't look like there are any cases where warping was actually used to correct timing of a recorded track, which I do sometimes have to do, but that doesn't seem to be the case today. It's just, you know, multiple takes until the timing was right. So really these shouldn't be warped. That's gonna introduce sort of subtle distortions, so that's bad, and later I'll track down all the ad-libs and de-warp them. So let's turn warping off, and we'll make sure the timing's not affected there. Yeah, they still look just the same. So yeah, don't warp vocal or any recordings if you can avoid not warping them. If their timing is already right, don't have warp enabled, and if you do, be sure you're doing something that's appropriate to the type of sample it is. And Beats was all wrong for that. It was probably just on by default. You know, I bet Cooper didn't even look. He was warping them with Beats setting deliberately or anything like that. So that's gonna be good. We'll nail that on these guys too, and like I say, root those out, the others out too, because that's just gonna make them sound muddy. Now another advantage to having the main vocals all together here and not all these different channels is that, you know, to get the track sounding right, we're going to end up tuning the settings on the main vocal line, which they're all in the group here. We're going to end up tuning this and reverb and whatever, like to Kingdom Come, to make it sound, you know, right, to make everything fit together. And the more of those different tracks we have, the less attention is going to be spent on any individual one. So all in all, we're probably just going to do a shoddy job mixing if we end up doing that. Now let's get back to the fact that like reverb was supposed to come in and out there, and I'm not gonna like try and reproduce what the vision originally was. I'm just gonna illustrate a method you could do if you wanted to do that. That'll be a little more interesting in result and a little more maintainable than the solution we saw with all the different tracks before. There's nothing in all of these guys, so let me just take them out. These guys empty, yep, all consolidated away. Yeah, this is much cleaner already. Look at this Acrobat Reader. Get out of here. What are you doing popping up in my video? All right. So let's say, for the sake of argument, now we've got this vocal strip that you saw earlier, and these aren't the final settings. You know, that'll be tuned. I'm just giving you guys some ammo to use. But let's say that we have, let's see what we got on this. On the main vocals entirely, we've got a reverb and a slap and a delay. Cool. So let's say that we wanted the reverb to go up and down, and this technique is going to work whether it's a reverb setting on the individual track, or in this case whether it's a return track, or the amount that goes into the return track. So let's just say we want the amount of that we're piping into the return track as far as the reverb to go up. So overall, the reverb on the vocals specifically is going to get louder. So let's listen to what it sounds like now. And I'm going to solo the reverb.
Certainty escapes the blankness of my canvas. Reinvention.
Now let's bring it up. Let's make it a little more interesting too. Let's make it a bit of a longer decaying verb. Let's do it like 2 seconds so we can really bring this out. Let's see what that sounds like.
Upon the loss of standards, hammer out a statement, the rest of them digest it. The mess of how...
delay really accentuating as well. But yeah, definitely can hear the reverb now. And so to sort of simulate me bringing this first one, the Vox Verb, which is going to this return track here, to simulate me like dragging that up and down, what I'm going to do is control click on a Mac, right click on a PC or a Mac with the 2-button mouse, which I recommend, is we're going to show automation. And I like to just, whenever I'm doing it, do it in a new lane too, just because I end up with several lanes, and I sort of want to see them at all times. So I did show automation in new lane, and I can see there's this little line, and that represents the level. And then now this guy has a little red dot to indicate that there's automation on him. So, you know, good to know. Later, if I were just to like randomly tweak a value that had automation on it, it would like actually might interfere with the automation. So you want to keep track of that. And it was low at first. It was, you know, negative 15. Let's say that around here, all of a sudden it goes up to like 11, and then just to play with it, we'll bring it back up here, and then down here, way back down, and let's just see what that sounds like in the verse. I didn't do those at any particular tense moments or whatever. It's just to give an example of what would happen.
The rest of them digest it, the mess of how they wait for us to conjure up a lesson. I dream of disposition, deemed for me to witness. A brighter disposition comes from thoughts of this existence. You can hear the sunshine make the pavement crack, or you could find a voice to get the music back. Modern day ballads to the better bitch that got away. Find a way to make it through the thought of how you felt that day.
Yeah, or if we had the whole beat on.
Sunshine make the pavement crack, or you could find a voice to get the music back. Modern day ballads to the better bitch that got away. Find a way to make it through the thought of how you felt that day.
Yeah, so and you can do that. We can do the same thing with the delay. Obviously, we show animation in 2 lanes and even go crazy with it and be like, okay, then you know, all of a sudden the reverb goes up and the delay goes up at the same time, and then goes back down and
crack, or you could find a voice to get the music back. Modern day ballads to the better bitch that got away. Find a way to make it through the thought.
You know, you could do all that, and if then you decided, oh, that was a terrible idea, I'm not going to do that. You just right click, delete automation, and it goes away. And you can get rid of these extra lanes that are just that's just visibility into it, you know. And you can automate any kind of parameter, like, you know, EQ settings even, and whatever. Anything you can tweak, you can usually right click it, show automation in new lane, show automation, all that stuff. So that's how Cooper could reproduce the feeling of having the effects go in and out or whatever, and it's more freedom than it was with just like, okay, now it's in this channel and it has these exact settings, and now it is this channel where instead it can go up smoothly and things too, or abruptly, whatever you like. So that's the automation feature. If you listen to EDM, a lot of it's made in Ableton, and they use automation for just everything. And instead of EQs, a lot of times they use auto filters, which are like EQs with built-in automation settings and everything too. So that's automation. You're gonna wanna learn that and play with it a lot to be a real Ableton power user. You know, I automate volume and everything, and when I did mixtapes in Ableton, I like mixed mixtapes, you know, I would automate the tempo setting over the course of the track, and it would rise and fall gradually and things like that too for beat matching. So, you know, yeah, so you can even automate things on the master track, and that's going to include song tempo. Little known secret there. So yeah, now you're one step closer to being an Ableton power user if you weren't familiar with the automation. All right, what do we want to do next? So now I'm going to consolidate the ad-libs as well. Great, so what I've done here is I've narrowed down a couple different types of ad-libs that are going on here. Let's see, this is, which type is
Comes
this?
from thoughts of this existence. Listen, you can hear the sunshine make the...
And this one is like kind of a co-main where he's just talking over himself, but it's still main vocals here. So I think I'm going to keep that in main vocals for now. And I also noticed there was vocals on top of vocals that look like just the same recordings as, so I just deactivated those by pressing 0. If you don't want to delete a clip but you want it to stop going, you know, press 0, it mutes it. Now these, what I'm calling main libs, the main ad libs.
Can't wait, pack the pipe again, die fast. Can't wait, pack the pipe again, die fast and live great.
So that's just a normal kind of a voice. Then there's these phone ad libs like this.
Otherwise I'd be drowning. That's dramatic. The truth, son.
Indeed, this looks like he's saying the same thing in kind of a normally voice here.
That's dramatic, don't you think?
And then in a phone voice here.
That's dramatic, don't you think?
I can see why you might end up doing that. Let's see. So here's the way you'd want to do something like that if you wanted, because it looks like it's just the same recording, and you've got two different channels of it. Let's turn this one on. Actually, let's just delete it, and let's say that, so we don't really want the phone libs to be all the way phone sounding. We just want them to be a little phone sounding. It looks like this is primarily what's causing that. So let's test that theory. Is that just what's going on?
That's dramatic, don't you think?
Yeah. So if we want just a partial filter that just partially does that, then let me just Command G it, put it into a rack. And then this is just one chain. This would be the phone chain. And then the dry chain. And now they're 50-50. Let's see how that sounds.
That's dramatic, don't you think?
And if you wanted a little less dry, whatever, just whatever mix you want there. And you can even map these things to macros there, which should be phone and then dry. And we'll throw phone at 0, dry at -3.
That's dramatic, don't you think?
And it could be whatever. So that's how you do that without having to have multiple tracks. So yeah, we just saved another track there. These trees, you know, they're not cheap. And boom. Now something else that's going to happen if you try to consolidate a bunch of different takes instead of doing it in one track that you might notice is that they shouldn't all be the exact same volume. So you think, oh, I've just got one volume control for this, so how can I make this sound good? Like for instance, this part is a lot louder than this next part here. So that.
The sinner of a man gets distracted by the past, rediscovers consciousness and hopes that it will last.
It's not that different, you know, because they were recorded in the same take. But there's going to be lots of examples of that. So for instance, let me just cut it, paste it, and you can just visually see they're not the same volume. So let me just raise the volume of just this clip. See it growing there?
The sinner of a man gets distracted by the past, rediscovers consciousness and hopes that it will last.
And now that's going to be, you know, that's like the last thing he says in this verse, so it needs to come correct. And then this actually is a little louder than stuff around it, so I'm going to reduce it a little. And obviously you've got a compressor on the vocals, so some amount of this is going to be corrected anyway. But, you know, if you have different sources, different takes, maybe a different day, they're just not talking as loud that day, you know, you can just adjust these clips. So then as they'll all sit together on the same track pretty well once you do that. Cool. So I'd say we've done a pretty good job at sort of consolidation. And now that we've got just a few tracks. We'll be able to tweak the settings till the cows come home and get them sounding just right, so people can really just sit and listen to the whole verse and let it develop. Because ultimately, what's happening is that your performer is performing. He's rapping through this whole thing, and while it kind of sounds cool in the booth, if the effects are just changing constantly, what you're really doing is like taking attention off of the performer and the actual content of the song and putting attention on to the sound engineering specifically. And that's not really what we want to do. We want to bring out the performance and make it sound how it's supposed to sound, not like distract from it with other kinds of tricks, So all right, that's Consolidating Vocals. I'll see you guys next time.